I see a pattern over and over again with founders. Not at the very beginning, but once the business starts to gain some traction, you got revenue coming in, the team is coming together, opportunities start to expand. And with that expansion comes a new kind of pressure. And it's one that they haven't necessarily experienced before. Decisions start to get weightier, heavier. Because now choosing one path doesn't just mean trying something. It means saying no to something else or several something else's. And that's where hesitation starts to creep in. Founders don't struggle because they lack options. Founders generally don't have too few ideas. They struggle because they have too many options, too many ideas. Maybe they have two strategies, two markets, two different ways that they want to grow, and both of them could work. So instead of choosing, they delay, they wait, they look for more information, they look for validation, they look for certainty. But certainty rarely shows up. And over time, there's something subtle that starts to happen. Their business slows down just enough that the momentum starts to fade. It's not dramatic. Projects move forward, but they maybe move forward only halfway. The team can sense that something's off because the direction isn't fully committed. That's what we explored this week. The idea that clarity doesn't come before commitment. It comes from commitment. At the beginning of the week, we talked about the fear of making the wrong decision. We talked about how that fear quietly turns into indecision because the founder is trying to protect themselves from being wrong. It's not because they're incapable. They're just trying to be protective of themselves. The Stoics had a very different relationship with this. Epictetus said 2 words should be committed to memory: persist and resist. You persist in the work that needs to be done, and you resist the fears and distractions that pull you away from that work that needs to be done. Now, that is not just philosophy, but that's a decision-making discipline. We then moved into something that's more practical. If you don't have certainty, and again, you usually don't, then you need a way to decide what you can respect, even if the outcome is mixed. A simple protocol: clarify the question, separate what's in your control from what isn't, and choose your direction. And then define how long you're going to stay with that direction before you reevaluate it. Because this is where so many founders break down. They make a decision, then they reopen it every time they feel a little bit uncomfortable. You get a little bit of a new piece of information. You get a new opinion, and there's no shortage of opinions out there. They get filled with doubt because they watch a video by a guru who says, here's what you should be doing. They get approached on LinkedIn by 400 people all saying the same thing. How's your outreach going? What if I could book you 10 calls a week? And if you're an early stage founder, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're a late stage founder, you probably still know exactly what I'm talking about. All of that turns into seeds of doubt. And those moments of doubt turn what could have been a really good decision, a great decision even, into a weak one because it never gets the consistency that it needs to actually work. So then we looked at what this does to a team, because leadership hesitation does not stay contained inside your head. It spreads. People start hesitating in their own roles, and it slows down projects and it drains energy. And that's because what you're giving from the top down feels uncertain. Teams don't need perfect certainty. What they need is steadiness, decisiveness. So then we looked at the cost of indecision, not just emotional cost even, but financial and strategic cost. When you try to keep multiple paths alive, you divide your resources, you weaken your execution, and you end up with 2 half strategies instead of one real one. And over time, that becomes incredibly expensive. And then appropriately, we closed the week with a case study, looking at companies like Amazon. From the outside, it's easy to assume that Amazon had clarity from the beginning, but they didn't. They had direction. They chose a path early, and they persisted in that direction long enough for clarity to show up, for it to emerge from the fog. See, that's the pattern. Not certainty at first, commitment first, clarity later. This is exactly where Stoic thinking becomes incredibly practical for you as a founder, or for you in whatever role you're in. Because the Stoics were not about perfect outcomes. That's not what they were focused on. They were focused on disciplined action. You don't control whether a decision works. You control whether you commit to it. You control whether you make the decision to begin with. And you control whether you stay with it long enough to learn from it. And over time, that discipline builds something that, honestly, most founders are probably actually looking for. Not perfect decisions, but better judgment. Because the founder who consistently chooses and acts will develop sharper judgment than the one who waits and analyzes and then analyzes again and overanalyzes. So if you step back and look at your own business or your own role right now, you probably have a decision sitting there, something that you've been turning over, looking at from different angles, waiting for it to feel like it's clear. The question isn't whether you've analyzed it enough. The question is whether you're willing to choose it and then persist in it and then resist the urge to keep reopening it every time it starts to feel uncomfortable. Because clarity isn't waiting for you on the front end of that decision. It's waiting on the back side. It's waiting on the other side. Choose, persist, resist, and let clarity meet you while you're in motion. Let's go.